Good night. It's the 26th of September 2023, and it's late at night. It's about to turn in. I was kept up late to deal with a farming matter. I'm just having a cuppa and turning in now. I made an earlier video about how uncommon common sense was, and I had to move into the area of finance to show you what is happening in the world. It looks very much from looking at what a lot of people are saying. Both Peter Schiff, the American economist, and Alistair MacLeod, the British economist, and several others, that what we're facing is something very, very, very serious. And from economic perspective, from world power perspective and world war and all of that, it is very, very serious, no matter how you look at it. 400,000 people possibly dead. That's not to talk about injured in the Ukraine, of both Russian and Ukraine nationality. Now, but I just go on to deal with another thing from this thing about uncommon sense and common sense. There is another thing that is worrying people, and I see it, and a lot of people who speak to me see it, and that is sheer lies told from official quarters. That is government and government agencies, not only in Ireland but all over the world, telling lies. And in the case of Russia and China, they're communist states, but they're actually not as bad. They don't tell deliberate lies as bad. Now, a very good example of that in the last 2 days here in Ireland, we had strong wind. We hadn't real wind, but strong breezes and bordering on wind. A good wind, you'd feel it blowing. It'd blow a paper out of your hand or an A4 sheet. And I have the local windmills here, and one of them completely stopped this evening at about 7 o'clock. It just stopped. And another of them was going, but it was tilted away from the wind, that it was just going round to make it look like it was going round. So 2 of the 5 wind turbines were not going round, and that's because there was too much wind power to be accommodated on the grid. And the people who run this is EirGrid, the Irish system operator, and they want a heap more wind farms, a heap more solar farms, and loads of offshore wind farms. And when you consider that the ones we already have in Ireland have to be turned off when there's wind, it says something. Now, yes, this morning, EirGrid announced that it had so much wind on the system. It had so much wind. It was an absolute great show altogether from Ireland's wind turbines. And that they were getting good power from them, and it probably was doing something. But what they don't tell you is the true story about this. And that true story is that the electricity has to be on 24/7 every hour of every day and every minute of every hour. It can't go off at all. It shouldn't go off any more than once a year. You can't have blackouts. That's the mark of a banana republic. That's acknowledged. You have to keep the lights on. And when you have to keep the lights on and you have intermittent sources of electricity, that means that the conventional power plant has to run differently than if you had no wind at all. So, today around 6 o'clock there was strong winds. So if you take a coal-fired a coal-fired condensing steam turbine, it's a big boiler the size of a large 2-story house, a big boiler with a whole lot of tubes going around. And the coal is ground up and fed in and burned. It can also use diesel oil, heavy oil or gas. Whatever happens, it takes 9 hours to start to get it from cold and get the water hot. Once you have it hot, if you let it cool down again, you have to do it slowly, otherwise you can cause cracking. And too much heating up and slowing down will damage it. And this plant is being damaged all over the world. So what's happening is when the wind blew well today, they just let the steam calm down a little bit and let the steam blow off, doing nothing. It was still heated, still converted to water, but it's let blow off, because they couldn't let it go down below boiling point, or very much, because it takes too much energy to get it up again. now, tonight, there's not a bit of wind out there. There is no wind, it's calm. The turbines are just going like that. There's almost no wind, although there's heavy winds planned for forecast for tomorrow. So at the moment now, the coal-fired plants are up and given full value. But for the last 5 or 6 hours, they are running, but not being used. So therefore, they do not save coal-fired condensing steam electricity at all. They just trip it out when the wind's in, because wind has to be allowed in. Now, to explain to you again, a combined cycle gas turbine is like a big jet engine, and there's a generator on the end of the spinner. And then the flue gases are allowed and turned up and fed into a boiler. So you use the jet engine propulsion, the rotor, to create electricity over here, and then you boil the water and you create electricity from the boiled water, the steam, the same as a conventional steam turbine driven by coal. So the combined cycle gas turbine is probably the most efficient. Coal is second, but the combined cycle gas turbine is probably more efficient, and of course you can't drive that on coal or turf because it needs either a liquid or a gas fuel to operate the turbine. Okay. Now, so the combined cycle gas turbine must be left running with the water in the boiler boiling. But sometimes they'll say we'll turn off the boiler. Sure, we don't need it. We have windmills. Well, then they use the backup of the open cycle part, the front part, the jet engine, which is only 30 to 35% efficient. The two of them together, the combined cycle, is 72 or 3% efficient. A coal plant is probably about 9% efficient, right? So so it's important to understand the efficiency rating. So they don't turn it off, and if they do turn off the steam plant, which is the best and the most efficient, it can't heat it up again for at least 9 hours, and in fact it damages it. So what they're doing is they're going over to open cycle gas turbines and diesel engines. Now, while EirGrid was bragging about all the wind energy they were getting yesterday, nobody asked them on the media, why are you whinging that you need $1 billion to buy diesel engines and open cycle gas turbines for Ireland? What happened was, when they built the windmills, they realised they couldn't turn off the conventional plant, and therefore the CO2 emissions was not going down. So they had to turn it off. But then if they turned it off, they needed something when the wind wasn't blowing. And that is diesel engines and open cycle gas turbine. The gas turbine being only slightly more efficient than a diesel engine. Right? So they ordered up a heap of these, but because the whole world went mad with this green baloney, the price has gone through the roof. The suppliers, such as GEC and Siemens, can't produce the generator fast enough. These are big generators that sit on a plinth in gangs. Nobody asked that simple question. Why are you blowing about all the wind energy you got yesterday when you're also whinging that you need €1 billion to install fast-acting diesel and open cycle gas plant? How is it that what was this windmills for? It can't be to save fuel, because if it was to save fuel, you wouldn't be installing diesel engines and open cycle gas turbines. You wouldn't need them. The fact is, you do need them, because they don't work at all. Because when you go to turn off your conventional heavy plant, you need this stuff, which is less efficient anyway. The result is, I have said, would you take the amount of fuel they use every day, they're net consumers of electricity, that's wind farms. But even at that, the very best that ever could be shown was that they could save 4% of their own capacity. Only 4%. So a wind farm of 100 megawatts only saves 4 megawatts. That's good evidence for that. And it's playing out. Germany has 61,000 megawatts of this junk windmills, and they're in serious trouble. They're in serious trouble with energy. Putin cut off the supply. and then blow, and they were going to stop reliance on fossil fuel. And when Putin did it, they were whinging. So you see what I'm getting at, folks, about energy alone. That's not to talk about other things. You have the accounts of lots of companies, all faked. They're not writing down the value of their property, of their stuff. Land keeps its property reasonably well. Buildings a bit better, but they should be written down over 50 years. They're not doing it. They're valuing all their stuff, like old machines and everything. They're valuing it at cost. And that is a fraudulent part of the accounting system and another lie. Meanwhile, every time you turn on our national broadcaster in Ireland, it's all this stuff, time and time and time again. And telling us then that all the migrants coming into Ireland are coming because of climate change. Well, in fact, the dole in Romania is only a quarter, well, maybe a little more, about 60% of what it is in Ireland. And when you come to Ireland, you get housed, you get fed, you get everything that's going, more than the locals. So this all boils down to one thing, and America is the most classic example. You have Janet Yellen, the chairwoman of the Federal Reserve, I think, and then there's that other fellow, Jerome Powell. Which of them is which? They're they're 1 and 2 in the Federal Reserve, in the main bank in America, the main state bank. I think Jerome Powell is the chairman, Janet Yellen is the second or something. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. They're very close. You have both of them saying there's no problem. They're going to bring down inflation. They're over whinging to China to give them money, to lend them money. Okay, so you see the lie. Oh no, we're great. Oh, we're all right. There's nothing to worry about. Oh no, and inflation going through the roof, and they're lying about the figure of inflation. It's at least 3% above what they're telling us. They changed the rules so they could lie. They changed the accounting rules so they could lie. In Europe and Britain and America and Canada, they changed the accounting rules. They changed the rules to suit themselves. And you have sleepy Joe Biden running the whole thing, and the mad for war, building up to war with Russia and with China. And they have the audacity to beg money of China so that they can send it to Ukraine, in which China wants no act or part. China is more or less siding with Russia. And if China gives America bond money, buys American bonds or lends to America, America's going to send it straight to Ukraine to attack Russia. And China and Russia are building facilities for coal, oil and gas and all that, interdependence and rail links and everything else. And they think they can push this over on Chairman or President Xi. They think they can push this over. They're pushing it over on us, and they have complete control of the media. So folks, on 13 minutes, we have what I said in the first video, the lack of common sense, the lack of the ability to figure out what's going on in basic terms without being too scientific about it, right? They can spell every word in a sentence, but they can't write a sentence, or they can't write a meaningful paragraph, and they can't count. And the same with government, and the same with Airgrid, lying about what's happening, telling one little part of the story. I mean, the first half of the Titanic voyage, maiden voyage, in 1912, the first half of it was great. That great fun, and you could film and photograph that first half if it was done, and put it out without saying the damn ship sank, killing a lot of people. And to somebody who didn't know, they'd believe that. That is how they are lying, and they think they're going to get away with it in America, Britain, the EU, Ukraine for what's left of it, Canada as well. They think and Australia too. They think they're going to pull this over. They're trying it every way they can. And the problem is the cost is stacking up. They're being kicked out of Africa where they were robbing them for generations. The French and the Yanks being kicked out, all lying. And the African robbing that was going on was hidden from view so that we never knew about it until the last month. That's how well it was hidden. No journalist or anyone was ever allowed right and tell us, do you know what's going on in Nigeria? The French are stealing all the gold, they're stealing all the uranium ore, and they'll only let the Nigerians use a French bank. No one ever told us that. If I'd have time and go over to it and visit it, I might have discovered that. But I can't be everywhere. So what we have is a massive lying organisation, and that climate change is all part of that. Whatever any of it, if there's any of it real or true, it's very little. There's a huge batch of downright lies being told by the whole governments of the world, and it's carried through to every arm of the government, and it's causing major rifts. It's splitting America down the middle, where ordinary Americans realise that they're being shafted. The Northeast Americans are all Democrat. They told the Texans, oh, let in all these migrants. Oh, you let them in and you look after them. Your man in Texas lorried them up to New York, and now the Mayor Brown is whinging that he has $2,000 a month. He didn't like it when it happened to himself. And they're heading off up to Boston and all up there, and good on them. So you see how I am complaining. Long ago there was some wee bit of credibility, and I have to say that when the Christian churches had a big say in Ireland, at least there was some wee bit of reality. Right, you did the bit of religion thing and that was that, but they didn't separate you from reality. They taught you reality, they taught you how to read and write and count, and there was a certain amount of truth in the news bulletins and all of that. When religion went down, it went out the window, and the muggles and the people are swallowing this. At least 60% of them believe it, and they haven't the brains or the common sense to question it. And that's those two videos. That's the video on uncommon sense, and here it's here again. It's still uncommon sense, but you'd add in here lies, pure, simple lies, barefaced lies. And a lot of people who spot the wee lies mention it to me, but what I try to tell them is it's systematic. It's not just one lie, it's a whole heap of them. It's a whole part of the attack of whoever is doing this. It's probably simply a greed for power. By lying they can get elected and get into government. That's probably what it is. But whatever it is, I'm sure, folks, you'll comment underneath and we'll hear back from you on that. And if you don't agree, say so. But the lies, I mean, I can prove enough. I can prove dozens of lies, 10s and 20s and 30s of pure lies that are falsehoods. And I mean, the idea of advertising or promoting electric cars without saying they need electricity and that electricity has to be generated, and without quantifying what a total move to electric cars in Ireland would be, how many power stations you would need. You'd need at least 2 in every county, and you'd need 2 in every county, and you'd need 6 or 7 in Dublin. Power stations. And they don't tell you that. That's a lie. They don't tell you you don't need it, but they imply that you don't need them. And that, to me, is a lie by omission. That's a lie by omission. That's like putting out a documentary on the first half of the Titanic voyage and saying it was lovely and great and play music and all that on it and show it all, reeling in the ears. And if that film doesn't say at the end, this ship went down with a terrible disaster after striking an iceberg with massive loss of life in terrible circumstances, if it doesn't tell you that, then the film is a lie. It is a deliberate misrepresentation and falsehoods. That's it, folks. I'll see you back for something else. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending on your view, and thank you very much.